Hi, Nudgestock. My name is Evan Hanover. I'm a director and anthropologist at Conifer Research in Chicago, Illinois, and I want to thank you and everybody at Ogilvy for having me here today to talk a little bit about deprivation research. Under any circumstances, this would be a great opportunity. Nudgestock would be a great place for me to speak with you about deprivation. It's a method that hinges on removing key components of people's routines in order to understand how they might respond and react to change. And it just so happens now at this very moment, COVID-19 has placed us kind of all in the world's biggest deprivation study. We're being forced to rethink and rebuild our routines at all levels, from the morning coffee that we like to have made just so on our way to work to the workplace itself. And today, I don't want to go that large, but I do want to talk about how we might use those lacks on a smaller scale in order to get consumer insights. So as I do this, it's part of a long tradition. The idea of using deprivation to spark reflection and understanding is nothing new. It's a widespread and culturally salient practice, and we've all probably done it, from Lent to meditation to the sensory deprivation tanks that you can visit for an hour in that strip mall. There are numerous ways that we deprive ourselves of something in order to see what we have and what we do and what we think in a new light. And the question then becomes, why use this at all? We have plenty of methods at our disposal to gain deep insights. I, for one, am an anthropologist, so ethnography holds a special place in my heart. We go out and do ethnographic immersions, interviews, and observations. We go into people's homes, maybe accompany them to a store or a place of work, and we learn a lot. We're able to unpack their behaviors and be done with it. We get our insights and we are able to define our opportunities. But for certain experiences, you need to go further, and that's where the need for something like deprivation comes in. So we can, as in the picture that is on this slide, focus squarely on the engagement and the people at the center of that picture, the people in sharp focus in the foreground, can show us what they're doing and share how they feel. At Conifer, we specifically use deprivation for other kinds of behaviors, ones that are highly routinized, when we may not focus because the things that people are doing are rote. They don't need to think about every step in detail because they do it every day and they like it that way. And so when we come to talk about these behaviors, the ones where we're on autopilot, people really struggle to articulate the reasons why the details of those experiences are important to them, why they choose to do the things they do. And it is only by disrupting the routines with deprivation that we bring these background details into the foreground, opening up the possibility for reflection and transformation. So when we create this void artificially in people's routines, they naturally seek to fill it. And we capture really sticky data for our clients as we watch them do it. Fundamental disruptions to people's routines really bring out raw emotions, and we all understand it. We like having things the way we like having them. We can completely empathize with that person who can't have that morning coffee anymore, who can't watch TV, or who is kept from munching on the candy that is sitting at their desks that they kind of chew on every day in order to focus or unwind or de-stress. Now, the second and third of these studies were actually things we did. We did not take coffee away from people, so don't worry about that. We're not that cruel. There are two approaches that we use when doing deprivation. In one, we simply take away one key element of the experience and observe how people respond, cope, and work around. To give an example, one of the first deprivation studies that I ever did at Conifer was in the very early days of television content moving online. And so we wanted to see what that would do to people's behavior if they were not watching it on their TVs. And so naturally, we told people they could not use their TVs. They could not watch live TV. They could not stream something on their DVR that they had recorded. There were no DVDs, none of that. But they can watch shows anywhere else. And that seems like a great invitation and seems today like it would be no problem, but those shows are really easy to find. Those shows are really difficult to find. Hulu had only just launched while that study was ongoing. And so we used deprivation actually as a tool to dislodge their normal behaviors in order to learn how people's long-standing mental models of consuming programming might translate to streaming online. The second approach, and the one that I'm going to be talking about for much of the rest of my talk today, is when we take away a key product and swap in something else. And so we really carefully select these products. We're not going to just swap in any old thing because we really want to decode the why behind routines. We want to expose say-do gaps, and we want to see how people respond to these new options for fulfilling established routines that we've then just totally messed up because we took away as I said, that kind of favorite snack that they munch on. And so it's fundamentally a behavioral prototype test. When we design these studies, we are looking to encourage or nudge new behavior out in the world. And so what we need to do these studies are three basic things. The first is that the deprivation should be part of a larger multi-phased research project. As we'll see in a second, doing a deprivation study in a vacuum really doesn't do you any good. We design experiments that very specifically explore behavior change and test specific hypotheses about what might help people change their behaviors. And then we kind of step back and explore how that absence nudges people's behaviors in what direction, and generally emotionally and behaviorally, how do they respond to it. So I want to talk about a concrete example that we did, which was a candy study. And we were looking to see what people would do when their favorite snack or their favorite candy was not at hand, and how we might get them to adopt something else. And people have favorites, and people tend to turn to specific foods at specific times. So sometimes dislodging these habits is difficult. So what we did is we created an approach, and we've refined this approach over the years based on inspiration from such frameworks as Charles Duhigg's habit loop. In the first phase, we established a baseline. We asked people to record their eating habits in remote diaries. So whenever they ate something, they told us what they ate, where they ate it, with whom, and then any reflections they had on the choice itself. Then in phase two, we used ethnographic interviews to dive deeper with the participants and really identify potential levers that we wanted to pull as part of the swap. So this was where we really determined what the swaps themselves might be. And then finally, there's phase three, which is the swap itself, where we watched our swaps as nudges kind of do their thing. Before going into the outcomes, I want to talk a little bit about a few of the activities that we use to engage our participants in deprivation. Deprivation is hard. We're asking people to give something up. So to begin with, we really want to present the swaps as actual presents, because by offering a gift, we're able to deepen people's investment. We're asking them to give something up that is fundamental to their daily lives. And that, again, going back to the previous example, imagine being asked to give up your TV. So people should feel like they're getting something in return. And almost more importantly, there's the data we get out of giving a gift. We have people unbox their swaps on camera, and this provides us with raw emotions: the shock, horror, humor, joy, or my favorite, confusion, as they imagine how this new thing might fit into their well-established routines. And this becomes a proxy for how people might react upon seeing a client's new product on the shelf. Of course, we don't necessarily want the swapped item to fit seamlessly into people's routines. We want to bring the need itself really into relief, and we do that by a misalignment to help people speak about what works for them, because they're trying and often struggling to fit this square peg in a round hole. And this is how we get at those drivers and criteria and need states. And in this study, we saw more clearly that there are these often highly emotional reasons that people value their go-to snacks, whether it's how the flavor texture provided an escape, how, as it was for one parent, this was a weapon in their arsenal to get their kids to behave, or in the example on this slide, sometimes one habit really needed to work with another. In this case, it had to work with coffee. One other mechanism we build in are lifelines or cheats. Participants in the candy study were given one cheat hour for the week. So we wanted to know how they would use it. What is it about that occasion for which they used the lifeline that made their usual product so irreplaceable? And so these lifelines really help us draw out the essence of what people need for their routines to work for them. The most immediate impact from this research, after we completed it, had to do with packaging, which might be a little surprising, but there's a deep relationship between packaging or there was supposed to be between packaging and these everyday behaviors. So there were these deeply embedded organizational beliefs that each pack type was precious and unique, and it served different customers perfectly for different use occasions. But honestly, when we took away specific pack types, we found that the packaging wasn't really what people needed to accommodate their habitual needs. They worked around it and didn't see it was a problem. And this made the client really rethink and redirect the significant capital investments that they had for creating and managing really an overabundance of SKUs. Beyond packaging, there were additional recommendations that rippled throughout their entire innovation plan. And this ranged from everything like rethinking their retail planograms to the underlying needs that defined their segments to what organic might mean in the context of candy. So there were some real short-term and long-term effects that the insights from this research can really deliver. So I want to wrap up with a quick summary of when you might use deprivation. First and foremost, as you probably guessed, you want to use it when you want to unpack deeply routinized behaviors that are hard to get to. Beyond that, we use it to study everything from future states, which really worked out with the online television project that we did, which I'm happy to talk about if you want to contact me. We use it to validate and explore emerging preferences, to understand behavior changes and the levers that cause those changes, product trial and adoption, and we see that kind of in the unboxing when people kind of first encounter the product. And finally, as part of multi-phase learning. So there are many different applications when you can use deprivation. But that's about it for deprivation. Thank you again for letting me talk Nudgestock. And if anyone would like to ask me about deprivation, please connect with me on LinkedIn or email me at evan@coniferresearch.com. Enjoy the rest of Nudgestock.